My wife cheated with my best friend during our backyard wedding, then secretly siphoned off $250, $0 from our joint account to buy a house with him. Now she's suing me for half the property I built on my inheritance. Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating at our own backyard wedding, but that's exactly what happened. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, getting married to Emily, the woman I loved, surrounded by friends and family, promising forever. We had everything planned out, a beautiful summer day, a small but meaningful ceremony, champagne flowing, and everyone celebrating. But in the middle of it all, I saw her, her lips pressed against my best friend, Jake. The way she looked at him like he was the only person in the world. That moment hit me like a punch in the gut. It was surreal. I was standing there, holding my vows, and I saw Emily's hand slide into Jake's. I saw her eyes sparkle with something that wasn't love for me. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. It was so quick, so shocking, I thought maybe I was hallucinating. But then I saw her whisper something to him, and they both smiled like they were sharing a secret that only they knew. My whole world crumbled in that instant. I felt my stomach tighten, my chest tighten, and the crowd around us seemed to fade away. I remember feeling numb, just staring at them, trying to process what I was seeing. The laughter, the happiness, they all seemed so distant, like I was watching someone else's life. I wanted to run over to punch Jake or scream at Emily, but I couldn't move. My brain was frozen. I kept thinking, how could she do this? How could she cheat on me during what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life? It's like everything I had believed in, everything I had worked for, was just a lie. After the ceremony, I excused myself and went to the backyard, trying to gather myself. My mind was racing. I looked through her phone later that night, hoping maybe I was wrong, maybe it was all a misunderstanding. But there it was, texts, photos, everything confirmed what I'd seen. Emily and Jake had been sneaking around for months. They'd been meeting up, exchanging messages, hiding it all behind my back. She'd even lied about where she was going, what she was doing. I found receipts of money transfers, $250, zero siphoned off from our joint account, money she'd used to buy a house with Jake. That's when I realized this wasn't just a fling. It was a full-blown betrayal. I was furious, devastated, and completely lost. How could she do this to me, to everything we built? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut so hard I couldn't breathe. All my trust, all my love just shattered into a million pieces. And what made it worse was her attitude afterward. She'd lie and deny, call me paranoid, say I was overreacting. She'd look at me with that bitchy smirk, acting like I was the crazy one. But I knew the truth. I knew what she'd done. And now I had to figure out what to do next. After I found out the truth, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I definitely couldn't trust her anymore. Emily kept insisting it was all a mistake, that I was overreacting, that Jake was just a friend she was confused about. Yeah, right. She threw around words like sex, mistake, and stupid feelings, trying to downplay what was obviously a full-blown affair. But I wasn't buying it, not anymore. I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, the whole 9 yards. The worst part was her attitude. Smirk when I confronted her, like she was proud of what she'd done. She'd say, "You're just jealous," or "You don't understand what I want." That bitchy tone, like she was the victim when she was the one screwing around behind my back. And Jake, he played it cool, acted like he hadn't done anything wrong, like I was the one overreacting. But I knew better. They'd been planning this for months, sneaking around, hiding it from everyone, including me. I decided I needed to confront her directly. I wanted answers, and I wanted her to look me in the eye and tell me the truth. So one night I sat her down. She was dressed. That typical I don't give a damn attitude, rolling her eyes and crossing her arms. I laid everything out, texts, bank transfers, the house she bought with Jake. She finally broke down, but her reaction was something I didn't expect. She started crying, acting all innocent, saying it was just sex, like that somehow justified everything. She said she was lonely, that I'd been neglecting her, that Jake was just someone who understood her better. I couldn't believe the lies coming out of her mouth. She kept insisting that I was overreacting, that it was just a mistake, that she loved me. But her words sounded hollow. I looked at her and saw a woman I no longer recognized. The woman I married was gone. In her place was someone manipulative, selfish, and completely indifferent to what she'd done to me. I felt a mix of rage and sadness, rage at her betrayal, sadness for what I'd lost. I'd always believed in our marriage, in honesty and loyalty. But she threw all that away for Jake, for some cheap thrill, some secret life she was hiding from me. That night I stayed up all night, trying to decide what to. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after she'd lied and cheated so blatantly. I started thinking about the money, the house she bought, the lies she told to cover her tracks. It was like she'd taken a knife and stabbed me in the back. I realized I had to get out, but I also knew I had to protect what I'd built. My inheritance, my property, everything I'd worked for before she came into my life. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial. And that's when I started planning my next move. Over the next few days, I threw myself into figuring out how deep this rabbit hole went. I started digging into our bank accounts, our financial history. The $250, $0 she siphoned off wasn't just some random amount. It was a calculated move. I found evidence of transfers, large withdrawals, and even some offshore accounts she'd set up to hide the money. She'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. It was clear she wasn't just cheating on me. She was systematically destroying what we had, all to be with Jake and to profit from it. I couldn't believe how cold and calculating she had been. She lied about everything, her whereabouts, her feelings, even her intentions. She kept insisting she loved me, that she was confused, but her actions told a different story. She'd been planning her escape, her new life with Jake, while pretending everything was fine. I started to see her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who used me for my money and then threw me away like garbage. The betrayal hit me hard, but I knew I had to think clearly. I contacted a lawyer, started gathering evidence, and made sure I had every piece of proof I needed to fight her in court if it came to that. I also hired a private investigator, just to confirm what I already suspected. She was living with Jake in that new house she bought with the stolen money. I wanted to know everything before making any moves. At the same time, I kept asking myself, how did I let it get this far? I'd always thought I knew her, but now I realized I'd been blind. One evening, I decided I needed to confront her again, not just about the money, but about her entire betrayal. I called her out, told her I knew about everything, the affair, the siphoning of funds, the lies. Her reaction was infuriating. She looked at me like I was crazy, denying everything, claiming I was paranoid, that I was just jealous. She even had the nerve to say, "You're overreacting. Jake and I are just friends. You're making this bigger than it is." That was the moment I realized there was no reasoning with her anymore. She was a master manipulator, and I was just a pawn in her game. The more I dug, the clearer it became that I had been played. She'd been planning her escape for months, and I was just the fool who'd helped build her new life. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and angry, all at once. But I also started thinking about what I needed to do to protect myself and what was fair. It wasn't just about catching her cheating. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my property, my money, my dignity. I had worked too hard to let her walk away with half of everything I built on my inheritance, especially after she used my trust and love to get what she wanted. I knew I had to act fast. I started preparing legal documents and talking to a divorce attorney. I wasn't planning to just walk away. No, I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. And I was going to make sure she paid for her lies and betrayal. I didn't want her to get away with destroying my life and stealing my money. I'd been sucker punched, but I wasn't going down without a fight. The more I delved into her financial mess, the angrier I got. It was one thing to find out she cheated, but the money, $250, stolen from our joint account, was the real slap in the face. I started pulling bank statements, and what I saw made my blood boil. She'd been funneling money into secret accounts, setting up that house with Jake, and even paying off some of her credit cards with the stolen cash. I couldn't believe she'd gone so far, so calculated, to wipe her hands clean of me while lining her pockets with my hard-earned inheritance. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted my lawyer, a guy named Mark, who's been handling my estate planning and assets for years. I explained everything, handed over the evidence, and told him I wanted to block any further transactions. I also reached out to a forensic accountant, someone who specializes in uncovering hidden assets. The goal was clear. I needed to freeze her access to our shared accounts, protect my inheritance, and prepare for a legal fight. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She lied about her feelings, about her whereabouts, and now she was trying to take everything I'd built. I had to be ruthless. I started drafting a divorce petition, but not just to separate. We were heading for a legal battle over the property I inherited. She was claiming half of it, saying I was trying to cheat her out of her fair share. That was laughable. I'd built that property on my inheritance, saved for years, and she had no right to it, especially not after what she'd done. Meanwhile, she kept up the act of being the innocent victim. She'd cry, call me controlling, accuse me of being paranoid and jealous. She'd spin stories about how she was confused and lost, trying to manipulate everyone around her. Honestly, I was starting to see through her bullshit. She had no remorse, no shame, just a desire to take what she could and move on. That realization made me even more determined. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money or my property. If she wanted a fight, I was ready. I also started gathering witnesses, people who could testify about her behavior, her lies, her secret meetings with Jake. I wanted to make sure I had all the facts straight before going to court. I was determined to fight for my rights and to teach her a lesson about betrayal. That's when I decided I'd hire a private investigator to follow her, confirm her current whereabouts, and gather evidence of her living with Jake in that new house. I needed every piece of dirt I could get. Honestly, the whole situation was a nightmare. I'd trusted her, loved her, and thought we had something real. Now I was facing the reality that she'd been planning her escape for months, using me as a pawn. It hurt so badly, but I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to be smarter, stronger, and more ruthless. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about justice, about protecting what was mine, and about making her face the consequences of her actions. I wasn't going to let her ruin me without a fight. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings, late-night research, and constant anxiety. I spent hours on the phone with my lawyer, Mark, refining the divorce papers and building my case to protect my inheritance. Every time I thought about how she siphoned off that $250, I felt a mixture of rage and helplessness. She'd taken my trust, my money, and now she wanted to take my property too. It was like she was trying to erase me, to rewrite everything in her favor. I hired the private investigator, a guy named Rick, who confirmed what I already suspected. She was living with Jake in that new house she bought with my stolen money. Rick sent me photos of her coming and going, of her smiling in that house, completely at ease. Seeing her happy there, knowing she'd betrayed me and used my inheritance as her own personal piggy bank, made me sick. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I also started to think about what I wanted, how I was going to handle this legally. I was prepared to fight her for every inch of that property. I knew she'd try to claim half of it, but I had the receipts, the bank statements, the proof of my inheritance. I wasn't going to let her walk away with what I'd built. I even hired a financial expert to assess her claims and help me prepare my counterarguments. She was claiming that I'd been controlling and neglectful, that I didn't deserve what I'd earned. That was laughable. I'd worked my ass off for years, saving every penny, building that house from scratch. Meanwhile, Emily kept up the act of being the victim. She'd call me a controlling husband, say I was paranoid, accuse me of trying to ruin her life. She'd tell anyone who would listen that I was the one cheating, that I'd been abusive, that she was just trying to find happiness. It was all lies, of course, but she knew how to spin it. She was a master manipulator, and she knew exactly how to play the victim. One night I sat down and looked at everything I had, evidence, legal documents, the photos of her living with Jake. I realized I had all the ammunition I needed to fight her in court. I also knew I had to prepare myself emotionally. This wasn't just a legal battle. It was a fight for my dignity, my future, and my sanity. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of walking away with everything. I was going to make sure she paid for what she did, one way or another. I made a promise to myself that I would see this through. Not just for the money, not just for the property, but for the principle. I wanted her to understand that betrayal has consequences, and I wanted to rebuild my life, even if it meant starting all over. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was done being the victim. From now on, I was going to fight for what was rightfully mine. The court date finally arrived, and I knew this was the moment everything I'd been working toward would either be won or lost. Sitting across from Emily in that courtroom, I could see the smirk she put on when she thought she had the upper hand. She still insisted she loved me, that everything was a misunderstanding, that she was confused and wanted a fresh start. But I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I had the evidence, bank statements, texts, photos, and I was ready to show the court exactly what she'd done. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out the case. The stolen money, the secret house, her manipulative lies, and her attempts to claim half of the property I inherited and built through years of hard work. Emily tried to deny everything, but her words sounded hollow and rehearsed. When the evidence was presented, her face lost all its color. She knew she was caught. The judge didn't hold back. She ruled in my favor, awarding me full control over my inheritance and the property I built. The court also ordered Emily to pay back the stolen money plus damages for her deceit. Watching her reaction was satisfying in a way I hadn't felt in months. She looked stunned, then angry, then defeated. She tried to argue, to manipulate the judge, but it was too late. The truth was out and justice was served. I felt a strange sense of relief, knowing I'd fought for what was mine and that I'd come out on top despite everything. In the aftermath, I filed for divorce, and it was finalized a few months later. Emily moved out of the house, and I took steps to rebuild my life. I sold the house she'd bought with my stolen money, using the proceeds to start fresh. I also made sure to cut all ties with her, blocking her from my life entirely. The pain of betrayal still lingers, but I've learned a lot from the experience. Trust is fragile, and I'll never let myself be so blind again. Looking back, I realized that her betrayal taught me to be more cautious, to protect myself and my assets. It also showed me the importance of standing up for myself, even when it's difficult. I learned that no matter how much you love someone, if they betray you, you have to fight to reclaim your dignity. I'm still healing, still trying to trust again, but I know I came out of this stronger. If I could give anyone advice based on what I've been through, it's this. Always keep an eye on your finances, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. People will betray you, sometimes in the worst ways, but you have the power to stand your ground and come through it. I may have lost a lot, but I gained clarity and a renewed sense of self-worth. That's what matters most now.